All right, let's do it, everybody. It's so nice to see everybody here. I want to greet everyone who's streaming. I'm sure we have a whole bunch of people streaming from Bogota today, right?
Bogotá, Colombia.
Yes. And we have streamers from all over the world. We're exceeding 200 a Sunday. It's amazing, from countries I didn't have any. I had to go to the globe to find out what they were, brother. And a lot of different states. So welcome everybody who's streaming with us. We're so glad you're here. If you would like to be on a mailing list to find out what happens here, what's coming on in this room every Sunday, please let us know. There's a sign-up place on the website for those of you who need to do that. Those of you in the room who are not on our mailing list, there are, I see them, green sheets over here and clipboards. And the email blasts on Thursday will continue. You know, preachers and rectors, they come and go, but the email blasts, they keep coming. And the forum, too. So, this is my last Rector's Forum, and I thought it'd be cool to have Jesus as my guest.
All right. He always makes a good entrance.
Rodrigo and I have been friends, thanks to our mutual friend Julie Lynn, for quite a number of years. Have had some wonderful bottles of wine together and some great food over at her house. And I'm in love with him and his wonderful wife. Is she here today?
Adriana will be here for the post-screening.
This afternoon. And kids. And I'm just thrilled that he could be our last conversation partner. Just a word or two about Rodrigo. Born in Bogota. He is the son of renowned Colombian Nobel Prize winning author Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And after graduating from Harvard, Rodrigo got that degree in medieval history. He studied film at the American Film Institute here in LA, and then began his career working as a production assistant and camera operator on many films in the late 90s. In 2000, he made his writing and directing debut with Things You Can Just Tell by Looking at Her, starring Cameron Diaz. He followed that by directing episodes of The Sopranos, 6 Feet Under, Big Love, Tell Me You Love Me, and In Treatment for HBO. Returned to the big screen in 2005 when he wrote and directed the drama Nice Lives, starring Glenn Close, Dakota Fanning, and Sissy Spacek. And wrote Passengers, and now this amazing film that's captivated my imagination because he has Ewan McGregor play both the role of Jesus and Satan, which just rings the bell of truth all up and down my soul. How we are both Jesus and Satan.
We're getting to know a lot about you. Finally.
TMI. So we're going to have a little conversation. We're going to show you a little trailer and a teaser for this afternoon because we are watching this movie before its wide distribution next month. So we're really thrilled that Rodrigo said yes. And after viewing it together at 3 this afternoon, open seating, so get here early. He and Ken Turan, the film critic for the LA Times, who loves this movie, and Julie Lynn, our mutual friend, who is the producer for this movie, and Rodrigo and I will be in conversation. It's going to be a great day with Jesus in the movies, and Rodrigo Garcia, will you please warmly welcome him to the Rector's Forum? So, my brother, I'm just going to tee up some really soft things for you to
Thank you.
take it. Take it deep.
No pressure.
Take it deep, brother. So, I'm just really eager to talk with you about storytelling, narratives. We talk a lot here about the new narrative. All of us have a chance to tell our story again so it can develop more coherence and give us a more secure base in love so we can go out in the world. So let's just kind of start generally there. If narrative is the thing that we do to make sense of our lives, can you talk a little bit about the power of narrative in your own journey and your professional life?
Well, I mean, I think story is the way we digest so many things. You know, I was invited to the Academy to present awards to the Nickel Fellowship winners, who are Nickel Fellowship, who are young new screenwriters, and I told them about two stories that I'd heard recently. One included that there was nothing, and then God created everything in 6 days, and man, and from his rib a woman, and and on, things that we know. The other story posited that there was nothing, and suddenly a huge bang created everything, including time. And from that, rocks and planets and molecules, and out of those little molecules came animals and dinosaurs and life. And I was saying, do I really have enough faith or enough science to digest either of those scenarios? Oh, I forgot one in the second one. There were dinosaurs, and then an asteroid came from space, crashed, obliterated them, and then little mammals became people. So, okay. You tell me which one is the most wonderful of the two propositions. But what I'm saying is, whether you rely more on science, more on faith, you do have story, and story helps you digest everything. And on a more personal level, I grew up in a world where, my father was a writer, his friends were writers, poets, painters. I was reflecting on this with my brother recently. We did not know a single business person growing up. The closest we knew was, my dad used to quote Bertolt Brecht, who said, "Who's a bigger criminal, the person who robs a bank or the person who founds a bank?" So that was the environment, and it was all about story. We grew up listening to stories, the power of anecdote. My father loved anecdote. Everything, jokes, memoirs. He said, and it's of course followed me forever, he used to say, there is nothing better than something well written, which means something better than something well told. So it's the world that I grew up in, and growing up in that world, plus what I was saying before, the fact that we use, it's like how we think of our childhood, in either memories, or in therapy, or in confession. That also is a dramatization, I waited for that bus for hours is a story. You were there for 43 minutes. It's just such a great way to adapt. I read recently that it's posited that one of the origins of storytelling is for forecasting. In the early man must have told stories which allowed others to exercise their imagination, knowing that if you've heard that behind that hill you might run into a tiger, then you've got that story in your head, which helps you be alert when you come to the hill. So I just don't know how we separate ourselves from stories. It's how we order that which cannot be ordered, by us anyway.
So Rodrigo,
was that long enough?
I loved it. Man, I want more. I'm just going to put these questions out and you go with it. You probably are not, I know that you're not as limited as I am. I have just one sermon. And I just see the laughter of recognition. And I just preach that puppy over and over and over again, And I may tell a different story, but and Desmond Tutu's daughter wrote a book about his sermons. And she said she and her mother would sit in the pew, and as he was visiting around from churches, the archbishop, and within 30 seconds, they would turn to one another and say, "Sermon number 18." So what are your basic stories that you keep going back to that you want to put on screen and put in our hearts and minds? Or not just one?
I always think I'm telling the new story for me. And usually about a third to a half of the way in, I realize it's the same story. I mean, I twist it and I turn it and I change the settings and I change the characters, and today's story is no different. It's the story of those people that we are bound to, that we cannot live with and we cannot live without. The people that you just, some people, their mother died 20 years ago and they're still arguing with her. Sisters, fathers and sons, husband and wife. They say that after you have children, you're never truly ever divorced, even if you are divorced and remarried several times over. So that kind of can't live with, can't live without, joined at the hip, is definitely, that always sort of it doesn't find its way into the story. It is the story. I find my way into discovering that I'm here again. Yeah, I think that's, everyone has that. No man is an island, as the poet said.
Do you think your dad had one story? Or a set of central stories?
I'm sure he had one story. All painters paint the same. It's like you said, everyone does the same thing. I've never thought of it in terms of him, and he has certainly books as ambitious and wide and multifaceted as 100 Years of Solitude or Love in the Time of Cholera. I suppose scholars and critics have diluted them to their essence. I haven't thought of it in those terms, but I would say, loneliness is probably one of his themes. The person looking to connect, looking to find roots, looking to find the other, looking for the shared experience. I suppose that could be one of them. Probably not as sad as it sounds.
So can you tell us about the creative process? What happens between the germ of the idea appearing? Does it appear in your head or your soul or your body or your heart? And then how does it take on life and get onto the screen?
Well, usually the initial idea is, a person in a circumstance with a problem. So it's an active idea. It's not, I'd like to make a movie about how people cannot live without each other. No, that's a concept. That's not an idea. To give you an example, I once had the idea of a movie that I made, and the initial idea was that a woman at 15 had become pregnant and had been forced by her mother to put the child up for adoption. And this was back when adoptions were closed. And so I could see this woman who was 50 and who had never recuperated. That's all I knew. But it was interesting to me to be 50 and to be haunted by, something that happened to you when you were 15, when you were being formed. And I thought the idea was strong, but that's an idea. An idea and a story are two different things. I had to now tell the story. If she's 50, how does she live? What does she want? If she hasn't recuperated, how is that dramatized? What does she behave like? And what does she want? What does she want? What is she looking for? So, the first thing you do after the initial wave of, my God, that is brilliant, you wait a few days, and after a few days, you get crickets. And then it's not brilliant. But after a few days, you get past your own idea that it could be brilliant, but is it still in your body? Is it still making you nervous? I can't get away from it. And then I started thinking about it, not writing, but taking notes. Who are the other characters? The first question, of course, is, where is the baby? Where is she now? If this mother's now 50, that baby is 35. Are they looking for each other? Are they not looking for each other? And, so I begin to build on an initial problem, and I begin to populate it with people. And then I write. usually write a third to a half of the script and get completely stuck. Or sometimes I write a whole draft and it doesn't work. And I've come to accept now, it used to drive me crazy when I was younger, that I write something like a draft or a half a draft, and it doesn't work, and now what I need is time. I just know that I'm not going to know what I'm really talking about for another 2 or 3 years. So I have to just leave it painfully, kicking and screaming, knowing that I just don't know what it's about. And I just have to wait. So I go on and work on other things. This used to drive me crazy. Now what I do is I always have things going, so hopefully something's coming to roost from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I wrote a story with my nephew, who's also a screenwriter. And, you know, he's young, he's in his 20s, so he was all like, let's go, let's do it, it's great. And I'm like, nah. I said to him, look, even before we're done, I have to tell you, this is how I work. We're going to work, and then I'm just going to have to put it aside because I'm not feeling it. So for him, 2 or 3 years felt like a lifetime. You know, for me, they went by, and sure enough, this week, I am seeing it again, so I'm picking it up again. It's funny, when you're young, a year is endless. I always feel that at our age, you need a year's warning for anything. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to talk to Ed Bacon at his church. Great. When? In 7 months. Perfect. But do you know what I mean? It's funny how the older we get and the more greedy and preoccupied with time we get, because we know it's limited, you're also strangely more patient. It's thank God for that, because otherwise it would. But anyway, that's the process. I have this idea, I think it's great, then I think it's okay, then I just sweat through it, and then it sits there flat and dead, and I need time. I need 2 or 3 years to go back and see if it's still alive.
I want to shift to talk about actors. So Glenn Close is someone with whom you've worked a good deal.
Yeah,
Could you,
3 times.
Yeah, so if you could talk, what role do those folks have in your creative process? And is there anything you want to share about her?
Well, you know, when you're writing, you know, you don't write for particular actors, but it does help at some point, or I don't generally, but it helps at some point to find a model. You know, a movie is not going to exist in your head or exist in a way that a piece of music or a novel will. You know, in the end, it will have to have a physical presence. So it helps me along the way, not too soon, but as soon as I need it, to know, okay, you know, does she look and move and feel more like Naomi Watts or more like Julia Roberts? You know, you're trying to find a climate, a temperature, a tone for her. So I do, and sometimes I'll even put pictures on the wall so that I know, I may or may not cast them, which is a way of saying they may or may not want to do the movie. I put it in a more elegant way. But they don't, you know, they don't know I'm writing, they don't know it exists, but I'm treating them like they're mine. So that's very helpful. Obviously, when I've worked with actors before, sometimes I'm working and I think, oh, this could be Glenn, and now it's, you know, I can hear her, I can see her. You know, and Glenn is a good example because I always say that Glenn has 2 brains. She has a very artist brain that works from intuition and from her instincts and very freely, but she also has a very rational, present brain that can see the movie, can see the script, can see what the director is doing, knows how she works, what works for her, what doesn't work for her. And I think that's one of the things that allowed her to be producer and screenwriter on Albert Nobbs, one of the movies we did together. She can definitely go from this space where actors work, where they prepare very thoroughly and very consciously, and then they try to put all that aside and just be on the set looking like they're flying from the seat of their pants, but they're not. And then she has that other brain. And I like that kind of actor very much. An actor that Ewan is like that also. You know, they're in this space which is creative, instinctive.
Ewan McGregor.
Instinctive, and but also you know, they're so conscious of what you're doing, you can talk to them directly. You know, I like that. So, I mean, actors, I mean, I love, that's one of my favorite things about making a movie is watching the performers. You know, a lot of making a movie is a lot of grief and pressure and settling, and there's not enough money, there's not enough time, but at least you get those little moments where you're watching the performances, and that's super thrilling, you know, to see scenes and characters that you invented alone in the night, full of insecurity, and all of a sudden there they are, breathing, talking. That's one of the most rewarding parts of the process, I think.
So we're going to watch a trailer in just a minute, but I'm so compelled to ask you this question about politics. So here we are so politically charged because we understand that the life of Christ, the life of God, is about changing the whole business and reducing oppression and all that stuff. When I watched Albert Nobbs, I thought to myself, in addition to being captivated by that movie, you know, Rodrigo is taking this down the field. He is advancing the social progress about gender. And I would just love to know if that just invariably creeps in the impact on social progress, or if to what degree you might intend to be about any kind of politics.
I think, you know, everything is political, you know, everything, I mean, you know, look at, this is a group with ideas that gets together to talk about ideas in a, you know, religious house. I'm not even going to say context. I'm sure not everything you discuss here is religious, but, you know, politics is in everything. And I'm interested in it, of course, and it's important, but I think most artists instinctively reject agendas, reject anything that is topical. But you can't help it. You know, this script that I'm working on now, the one I mentioned that I developed with my nephew, you know, I am at a juncture where a group of people that I thought were men and women, I'm strongly getting the feeling they're just women. Creatively, I'm feeling it in my bones, but my conscious brain is thinking, okay, what is that going to mean? What am I saying? It's going, you know, things, we see things in time. We see them in our culture when we're living. So I'm trying to balance that capricious side of me that says, you know, say I have an idea for a group of Mexican immigrants who are rapists. Okay.
I was wondering
okay,
if the political.
If I make that movie.
Yes.
That references the present.
Yes.
But as an artist, I'm saying, wow, this is an interesting, you know, from a human point of view, I'm not suggesting I would do that, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's like everything means something. So you're constantly saying, what can I say here that means something to me and that is coherent with my story, that is not so direct that people are going to tie it to headlines, but also I want it to be a reflection of how I feel and think. And I don't always feel and think politically correct things. So, yeah. Let me give you an example. When I worked, for example, on series set in LA, like 6 Feet Under, etc., you always have to cast the extras. And we would shoot in a kitchen. And the assistant director would say, what kind of extras do you want back there? And I'd say Mexicans. He'd say, all of them? I go, yeah. And he'd go, don't you feel that's a little, you know, it's a little weird? I mean, do we? And I say, have you been to a restaurant? And then he'd say to me, how about the gardener? Mexican. And they were like, really? And I go, dude, I would say, when you say, for example, if you're going to make a movie about a Mexican cook or a Mexican person in prison, that's only racist if they are just Mexican cook. But if you make that person a full, living, breathing person, then you go there. And I'm just, by saying everyone in this kitchen everyone in this Indian cuisine kitchen has to be Mexican. I'm just acknowledging the fact, immigrants are a big part of the engine. And I'm not going to pepper it with United Color of Benetton just to be, do you know what I mean? So again, you're balancing the creative and what you think is right with the political. Anyway, I think for storytellers, it's a constant debate. What does it mean, what I'm saying? Do I want it to confront with my own ideals, or forget ideals, just go with your gut? It's a constant, problem.
Got it. I want to go more, but we do need to talk a little bit about Last Days. So you and I are going to separate from one another, and we're going to turn and show this trailer, and then we're going to bring our chairs back together and talk a little bit more about that. Okay, somebody down the lights.
How long have you been out here, holy man?
Since the last full moon, maybe a little longer.
The desert is ruthless. Strips you of your vanities, your illusions, gives you the opportunity to see yourself for who you are. You people are never alone. Some spirit or something is always with you.
I have water for you here, Yeshua. That's what your mother calls you, isn't it? Your father. Everything matters more to him than you. My father loves me. He loves himself only. Oh, what anger. You are your father's son.
You are an easy target. Because you're weak.
Your good intentions will be wasted here. They don't need us to ruin their lives. They'll do that all by themselves. These things he expects of you. Do you think anyone will care? Men of 1,000 years from now?
Have you found what you were looking for?
No, but I'll stay as long as it takes. You think you're his only child? There are others. No, there is only me. There is only me.
All right, I have to tell you, I'm already in sacred discomfort.
Well, discomfort is good. It moves the world forward a little bit.
But my heart's beating fast. Wow. So this afternoon, when we have a conversation with Ken Turan and Julie, we'll be talking probably a lot about the kind of the critical elements of the movie. But since I have you all to myself, can we talk a little bit about what kind of spiritual impulses did you feel that kept beating louder and louder?
Very mixed and contradictory ones. I didn't grow up in a religious family, though I grew up in Mexico, which of course is a very Catholic country, with severe separation of church and state. So it's very religious and very unreligious compared to the U.S. But my dad and my mom were great readers of the Bible and the Gospels, and I think my dad would say things like everything is in the Bible. I think he could say that if you read the Bible, Don Quixote, Moby Dick, Oedipus Rex, and War and Peace, you could be done. just with those 5. So, it was not a religious environment, but it captured my imagination. And how can it not, as a father and a son, and then, as a son and then later as a father, the story of Jesus is, what can you say? I was talking to Chivo Lubeski, the cameraman, who's Mexican like me, but Jewish, yesterday about when we shot the crucifixion, and he said, well, it's the icon. And I thought, well, yes, we're talking about the image. So, I have to say, when I thought of this, my initial idea, Jesus comes out of the desert and spends time with father and son. I thought, what are you thinking? You're going to make a movie about Jesus? Who are you? But, like many subjects, the subject chooses you. So I couldn't tell you exactly what possessed me. I just knew I could not resist it. Maybe it was a time when, my parents were older, my children were growing, they were towards the end of high school, about to, go into the college and slowly moving out. So something compelled me to look at fathers and sons, the passage of time, and the mystery of time, which is the mystery, So even if I am not a devout Catholic, the mystery is undeniable. And I thought, if I think of Jesus in human terms, wow. When you write, you always have to think, what if I'm him? What if I'm her? So I only wrote about the human side because the divine side is unimaginable. And so I thought, well, if he's like me, then what? And that was my door. That was my entrance.
So talk about casting you in both of those roles. I've been preaching this since Julie said, you've got to see this movie, 2 years, and now I get to see it today.
I initially didn't think of him because one of the things writer-directors do in particular is you get very narrow on your ideas about what it needs to be. So I was looking for actors who were in their early 30s because Jesus was 30 here. This is before his ministry, 30, 31. So I was very focused, and Ewan was 41, 42, so I never really thought of him. I was looking at other actors. And then coincidentally, or not, because things happen, I went on holiday with a group of families, and Ewan and his family were among them. I didn't know them, and became friends with him. And obviously he's a very good actor, but, getting to know him, first of all, he looked very young, which immediately, attracted my attention. But he has, he projects a lot of inner life, a lot of complexity, mostly a great curiosity about the other. Very, very human, very humble guy, very interested in everything to do with the other. And a friend of mine who's a Catholic, Jane Fitzgerald from Boston, that I went to school with, she read an earlier draft of the script, and she said to me, he has to love these people more, the other 3 characters in the movie. He has to love these people more, and gave me a great Christian insight into the story. So I made the changes so that was there, and then I saw just the empathy that Ewan projects, and I thought, well, it could be him. Yeah.
And the Satan part?
Well, the problem was, my original idea, it was just him, I don't want to ruin the movie, but it was him running into a father and a son, and then I realized that was very limited. The father and son weren't talking, so I didn't want a movie that was just a conversation, Jesus father and Jesus son. So I brought in the mother in a particular set of circumstances. But even after I brought in the mother, I realized I needed someone for Jesus to talk to who knew who Jesus was. And the most easily available person who is in the gospel in the desert is Satan, of course, the demon. It just came to me like that he would show up looking like Jesus, because that's the best way to, that was a very good way to screw with Jesus's head. You're faced with your own image, and so I thought that was a very good shortcut to how do I physicalize that presence? How threatening is that? And then to have yourself telling you, you're not good enough, you're not up to it, you're scared, you're not it, your father doesn't love you, you're not the only son. To have all those insecurities spoken at you, it just immediately fell into the shadow side of him. It's the two sides of the same person.
Wow, okay, I need to pay attention here. So I know that there are a couple of three questions.
Why are you in such a rush? Is this like your last day or something?
I have one more sermon to preach in that one pulpit. So I want to say some closing words, but I do want to, I just have a sense that there might be some questions. So Nancy, I'll bring the mic to you.
I'd like to ask about your process. When you have an idea and you're trying to put roots in it, do you write as a prose story that you then shape into a script?
First of all, I think about it for as long as I can without writing anything, to make sure it sticks, it's still interesting, it's still, I let the days go by and I think about it and think about it. Once I've thought many things, I start taking notes. As many notes as I can, not in story order. And I wait till that gets big, and then I'll start thinking about where the story ends, where it goes, how it develops, and where it ends. So I delay writing as much as I can. Try to live with the story for as long as I can, for no other reason to see if I'm still interested in it.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Most of us know this story that you're going to show us. We know the details. The thing that we disagree with is the meaning. When you write a story, do you have a particular meaning that you want to get across, or do you allow us to do with the story the meaning that we want to give to it?
I mean, I have a meaning that is ostensibly there. Then I have a secret meaning for the story that I never tell anyone. What it is that is there for me that is always secret, and I never reveal it. It's a part of the glue of the story. And then, yes, not only do you not want to tell the audience what to think, you want to provoke. There's always some perverse pleasure in someone saying, "Oh, that's not like that at all." And certainly this is, I don't think the movie's particularly full of provocative ideas or provocative images. Ewan and I were actually both freed by the fact that we read a lot of books about Jesus, and no two were the same. So after a while, it's like, okay, we're going to do our own thing. But yeah, I think you have to leave space for the audience to draw their own conclusion about the movie.
With having the actor play two parts, how did you balance it? Did you, to create conflict, did you have the devil shoot first, or how did you handle that with Ian? And
I think we did it in very practical terms, whatever was easiest to shoot. You'll see it later tonight, there's just a long scene between them where the demon has the bulk of the conversation, so we shot him first. But it's always Ewan, I would always just give him the choice of what he wanted to do first.
Yes, I'm a big fan of In Treatment, and I'm a therapist myself. And can you tell us a little bit about the creating of that? And did you have therapists consulting with you, possibly your own therapy?
Thank you. I'm always torn about the praise for In Treatment because it's based on an Israeli series, Betipul, which was just excellent. They did a discovery. Everyone had thought about making shows about therapy before, and no one could. What the Israeli creators of the show did, they had a couple of very great formal ideas. The idea that there's always a Monday patient, a Tuesday patient, and then on Friday, the therapist goes to his supervisor. That formula was super potent, and also putting the therapist at the heart of it, and then having these hero patients. It's assumed that he has many patients in the week, But these ones that we feature are the ones that are pressing his buttons. So that was very dramatic because it brought the conflict into the room. It wasn't people talking about stuff outside the room. The conflict was in the room because, everyone was projecting, on everyone else. So, we improved on something, I think, we improved a little on something that was already very good. So, I always receive praise for treatment with happiness and a little sadness that I didn't truly create it.
One last question.
So here's some discomfort for you.
Yeah.
And I know you talked about idealism and making a decision about what you want to portray. And it's really wonderful to see you as a person of color being so influential in the industry, because that's not a common thing. But were any actors of color considered for the roles of Jesus or any of the other lead roles? Because there is a constant portrayal. You wanted to be, okay. A constant portrayal of Jesus as a white man.
Put it up like this. They're turning
Okay,
it
a
up.
constant portrayal of Jesus as a white man in almost every image that we see. And I'm sure that was not your intention in this case, but there's always the hope that somebody will move away from that at some point. But I'm just wondering if that was ever a consideration in any of your casting.
Yeah, I mean, you think about everything. The movie was once going to be in Hebrew, shot in Israel. I couldn't do that. I couldn't find money. At one point, I thought of doing it in Mexico, all with Latino actors, and that had its own difficulties raising money. So, I was very open to everything. When Ewan came along, I just connected so much with his empathy that I hope, you'll see in the movie, that it completely won me over. Did I think you're casting a white, blue-eyed Jesus? Yes, I did think that. I know what it means. I know what, I plead guilty, and I accept wholeheartedly anyone's anger with it. In the end, I had to go with the best actor I could find who wanted to do it, who was a very good actor, and who just had this level of humanity to him. Guilty as charged.
Good.
I mean, I don't say that glibly. That was the choice. And, when I show it to Mexican friends and African American friends, my knees are buckling, believe me. But you know what? Too bad. You're the artist, and you have to just take responsibility.
Before we thank Rodrigo, I want to take this moment as a personal moment to thank you for 21 years of packing this room and coming to learn. I took communion my first week to a couple who no longer could come to church. They were 91 years old, and they had met one another in this room at the Rector's Forum when they were 75.
So look around you just in case.
So I took communion to them because I knew that they had been here every Sunday and that the church needed to go to them when they could no longer be at church. And just as I was packing up the communion kit, he pointed his bony finger at me and he said, "The most important thing that goes on at All Saints is the Rector's Forum. Treat it as though it's continuing education. I feel like I got a second doctorate by going to the Rector's Forum." That value has driven the selection of the guests who have stretched us, challenged us, taught us, and illumined our lives and transformed us. And I am so thrilled that this man I love so much, Rodrigo Garcia, was our apex in that. Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much.